So hi, my name is Liam Logan, and I've been a welder for 6 months in the industry. I'm currently a trade school student, waiting to finish up trade school so I can get back in the industry and weld. And this is just a consumer review about the Cleanspace 2 powered air respirator. So my health was really bad when I was a welder for a while. So during my first few weeks, I started noticing shortness of breath, and I started feeling weird. And then eventually my chest started to hurt. I'd get these weird chest achings or something in my lungs, and I couldn't even walk up the stairs without getting out of breath. It was getting really bad, and my even my friends were like, "Ha, he has smoker's lung," but I never smoked a day in my life. And it was the fume from the shop I worked at. And to give you a little background, that shop would not provide a respirator for you. They had N95s, but those don't work against welding fume. It's a little bit too fine for an N95 to block, if anybody was wondering.
Okay. I'll put the disclaimer. Okay, disclaimer.
I could talk about my experience with other respirators.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's start off with that.
Yeah. Okay. So 3, 2, 1. So I've had experiences with other sort of respirators. I've had negative pressure respirators before. I had some from Miller. I had some from 3M. My latest 3M respirator was a size small, quick latch respirator. It was pretty great for people who want to spend a minimal amount of money on a respirator, because it allowed you to breathe safely, but then you could use the quick latch feature and detach the respirator and it would hang down from your face. The only issue was that it was a negative pressure respirator, and doing all that physical work all the time that I was doing in that shop, I was welding small parts, so I was constantly welding, picking up about a 100-pound piece of metal, stacking it, and there would still be smoke coming off of that thing. So I'd still have to keep my respirator on while I was lifting, so the quick latch feature didn't really do much to help. And there was smoke in the air constantly because the company lied and told me that there were fume extractors mounted on some I-beams, but in fact they were actually just heaters that the company wouldn't turn on in the winter. So I've tried all these negative pressure respirators, and eventually when you're breathing in and sucking in all that air, the dust and the smoke starts to breach the sides of the mask because of the negative pressure. It wants to suck everything in, and that's not good. And I ended up getting hypoxic a lot, and it would get them all clogged up, and it would make me hard to breathe, but I'd still have to use them because I didn't want to buy new filters. It would have been too expensive and too impractical. So that's my experience with negative pressure respirators, and I've used tons of them. I've used all shapes, sizes, and they all suck. So after my experience with some terrible negative pressure respirators, I decided to look for a powered air purifying respirator because I found that those were the best in protection against the welding fume, and they had lots of them. And they all had something in common. They had a belt with a massive battery pack and just a massive filter attached to a hose. So I was looking for a powered air purifying respirator after my experience with negative pressure respirators. They didn't really work that well, and the little half masks would never protect me, and I kept on getting sick, and I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and I was getting metal fume fever at least every 2 weeks. It was that bad. So then I went and looked for a powered air purifying one. The only problem with them was that I'm moving around so much, and I'm just going into all these areas that have things that could snag on it. So what the majority of these have is a belt with a massive battery pack and a massive filter in the back, and it's attached to a hose, and the hose goes to a back, and it's attached to a really heavy welding helmet that has a full air system, and it just blows air into your face. And those are great and all, but they were too heavy for me. It just didn't appeal to me, those gigantic space helmet and battery pack looking ones. Very, very heavy, very unwieldy. So I went and looked for another one, and I came across two. One from I came across the Cleanspace 2 powered air purifying respirator. And what's great about this thing that it doesn't have any hoses, it doesn't have any belts. It's just it's basically just a neck device. This thing just rests around your neck and provides you air. And what I found was great was that you don't ever have to adjust the flow of this respirator. There's no need. So other respirators of powered air purifying variants, you have to either use a dial or a series of buttons to adjust how hard it flows because you want to maintain positive pressure in the mask. And this can vary depending on the situation where you want less or more flow. But sometimes that constant flow can get annoying from what I've heard. I've heard people start to get chapped lips and start to get very, very cold from it. This one seemed more appealing to me because it would fit underneath my welding helmet. I wasn't going to spend more money on a massive welding helmet, and I didn't want something too big. So I got this, and this thing was probably the most convenient thing I've ever bought. So I had a couple questions when I first looked at this thing. I found this surfing the web for a powered air purifying system, and my first question was, okay, this thing's great and all, but will it provide me with enough air? I mean, look how small this thing is. And it's just a half mask, right? And I was thinking, you know, if it's small, maybe it's not too powerful and it wouldn't provide me enough air as the big ones. So my next question about this respirator that I kind of asked myself was, would it provide me the air consistently and accurately? Because this thing is unique in the fact that it has a breath responsive system, so it won't continuously flow air into your mask and you just breathe it in as you go. This thing will have a breath responsive system where it will maintain constant positive pressure in the mask by monitoring the outside and inside air of the mask. And it'll give you positive pressure all the time by compensating for you breathing. So it detects the negative pressure of you taking a breath, and then it compensates by blowing air to maintain that positive pressure through a filter in the back right here. And the real question here was, is it going to consistently and accurately give me the air I need? Is it just going to blow the weakest, or is it just going to blow the hardest every time I take a breath, no matter what kind of force my breath is, you know? And would it do it all the time? Because I was worried that sometimes this respirator might skip a breath where I would breathe in, but it wouldn't detect my breath and it would just not give me air. So these were my questions about the respirator when I first looked at it. The last question I did have was, you know, this unit has a lot of technology put in it, but will it keep the crap out better or similar to another respirator of this type? Now, I've had this exact filter for months now. This thing is filthy. This thing is just brown. That would have all been in my lungs. That would have literally been inside my lungs.
See all the dark end here? Flip it over, you can see the white right there.
Yeah, see how he's showing you? Because when you breathe, you suck in air from outside, and that all just goes into your mouth hole or your nose hole and into your lungs. But see, gases go out, but dust and organic vapor and crap doesn't. It never leaves your lungs. The dust you inhale, it doesn't matter if it's dirt, it doesn't matter if it's grinding dust, it doesn't matter if it's stone dust, it literally doesn't matter. It will never go away. You breathe it in once, too bad, it's stuck. You can't do anything about it. Suck it up, cry about it. So that's why I decided to get this, because there's no way I will be dying of lung cancer in the future. I'm not doing that. That's not what I want. What appealed to me is that this filters about 99.7% of all airborne contaminants. And yeah, it seems like it's doing a good job, because this thing is completely caked with just garbage. So another cool thing about this, since it is a positive pressure mask and a powered air respirator, it'll blow all the material out, so it won't let any of the nasty stuff inside this mask. But what's good about this material that I found that was a little better than the other ones I've looked at, there was another respirator from another company that is also very good, but it was made of cloth. And not to say the cloth was bad, but everybody in my shop is wearing earplugs, and there's really loud noise going on all the time. And if people can't really hear me talk that well, which honestly, people can't really hear you talk that well even without the mask. So this one's great because you can have people read your lips in this thing. And what's great is that it gave you the pluses of having a negative pressure respirator while also having a positive pressure system, because this actually requires a fit test. So this completely seals to your face, unlike other powered air respirators, which is a loose fitting respirator. This is sort of both a tight and a loose fitting respirator. It needs a good seal to your face, but it doesn't need to be too tight, if you know what I'm saying, because it'll still blow the material out, but it does a good job of not letting it in anyway. And I've taken pictures on another phone of mine. I don't have them anymore, but my face would have crap along the outsides, like on my neck here. As you can see, there's still some stuff there from when I was in from last week. I was doing some stuff at trade school, and there would be crap just on the sides of my face, everywhere, except for where that respirator was. There was basically no dirt. It was pretty much clean. So that's how good of a job it does versus compared to my negative pressure mask, where it didn't even matter. There'd just be stuff inside the mask, and it just didn't work. It sucked. So about how accurately this mask provides you air. It provides it all the time. I've never had it skip a breath. So if I'm breathing very, very hard, it gives me enough air I need to where I know that I'm not going to get out of breath breathing very, very hard. It's very good at that. And if you're wondering if you'll ever have a hard time breathing in this thing, no, it will not skip a breath. It's very reliable. I've had this thing for about a year, and every single time I put it on, I can expect the same performance every single time. And also, it works in very, very dusty environments. It's what it's made to do. As long as this filter has excellent to good flow, you should be golden. You should be able to flow properly every time. And I will say that if the filter is slightly clogged or it doesn't have excellent flow anymore and just has good flow, maybe on the lower end of good flow, it may be time to change your filter, because the airflow, the peak amount of airflow that this thing will give you gets less the more clogged this filter gets with dust and garbage, basically. So make sure to check your filter and to do flow tests before you work, just to make sure that it's all good to go. So let me don it real quick to show you how accurately this thing will give me a breath. This respirator is really simple. All you got to do is you just have to put this mask on here, and you take a breath, and that's all it takes. It's breath responsive. So that's what I was skeptical about before, but and it's never failed on me, which is very nice. I like that. So I just adjust these straps here, and so that gives you an example of how it works. So this respirator, it may seem like a lot of money. I spent over $1,000 of my own money buying this respirator. This was not given to me. I found this on the internet and I bought it. And I will say that it might seem like a lot, but it will probably save you money in the long run. And I'll tell you why. So if you're a welder and you know how bad the welding smoke is for you, and you know that you're probably going to get lung cancer in the future, this thing is probably this thing will probably save you money, because what is $1,200 now versus about, I have no idea. I live in the U.S. Healthcare here is just insanely expensive. It'd probably be hundreds of thousands of dollars to get lung cancer treatment in the future versus spending about $1,000 now and buying yourself a tool that will keep you a lot more comfortable in the workplace than you might think. This thing, I mean, breathing is pretty nice. I like breathing personally. It's nice to be able to take a breath and not feel like you're gonna die. For stone workers, this thing is excellent for stone workers. Just make sure you don't get this thing wet. The Cleanspace 2 model is not water tolerant. They have a model called the Cleanspace Ultra, which is. But for anybody who's doing dry cutting with stone, this thing is great. It'll save you from silicosis, and many stone workers will tell you that silicosis is not fun and it will kill you. I personally know somebody who has had lung complications from silicosis and from stone working, and unfortunately passed due to lung complications and heart problems. But yeah, this thing will save your life, and it'll save you money. Don't spend over $100,000 on a hospital bill and shorten your lifespan. Just get this thing, and you'll probably be fine. That's just my opinion from using it. That's what I think about it. It saved me a lot of time and money. And another cool thing about it is, if you know what a CPAP is, for people with sleep apnea, it's a device that just creates positive pressure to help you breathe better in your sleep. This thing uses the same technology, so it'll actually assist you in breathing, sort of. That's what I noticed. It's weird. It feels like it's trying to force air down your throat or into your nose when you take a breath, because of the fan and just the pressure just forcing air into your mouth, which is a good thing. You know, you don't want to be short on breath. So another plus about this, another thing I wondered about this mask is that, you know, would people think it's lame if you walked into a welding shop wearing one of these? Like, would people walk around and would you get like made fun of and I mean, maybe that's just me being insecure, but I was thinking, oh man, people are gonna think I'm like a loser or something if I'm wearing a respirator. Well, no, that's not true. Everybody thought it was sick. I got called Darth Vader, and people thought this thing was the coolest thing they've ever seen, and everybody wanted one, and that's because, I mean, breathing's pretty important, and it's fun to be able to breathe properly. A guy I was working with was asking me how much it costed, because since he started working there, he had shortness of breath at work, and he thought it was just terrible. He could not breathe at all in that place. Yeah, the people thought this thing was really, really sick, and that kind of made me like, oh no, people do like powered air respirators. They'll think you're cool wearing this thing. At least in my shop. I don't know about everybody else's shop, but that's just something for me. And also, this thing charges very fast. It has 8 hours of battery life, and you might not think that's enough to get you through a whole shift, but this will charge fully in about 2 hours, and most lunch breaks are about 30 minutes, so you can charge it on your rest break, which was 10 minutes at my shop, and then your lunch break, which is 30 minutes, and that should give you more than enough charge to be able to make it through a whole shift. And I had trade school after work every single day, and it still managed to have enough battery to get me through trade school, which was very nice. So, a bit about my recovery since wearing this thing. I used to have shortness of breath. I couldn't even walk up the stairs because it was that bad. I pretty much had smoker's lung, despite me never smoking a day in my life any sort of substance at all, or even vaping. I've never done any of that, but it's pretty much smoker's lung at that point, or worse. But my health is completely recovered now. I still may have some lung damage just because of the little while that I was exposed to the welding fume and because of my terrible reactions to it. It used to feel like somebody shoved a rake down my throat and then just ripped out all the insides, and it's exposed and it's just stinging. That's what metal fume fever feels like, and I used to get that every single weekend, and it would persist throughout the whole week, and I'd be working through that. I probably should have told somebody, but I never really did. I just wanted that money. And I got this thing. I started to never get metal fume fever again, and I even bought a nuisance filter for it. This is the HEPA filter, but I did buy a nuisance filter for it, and my supervisor would plop a big piece of galvanized steel right in front of me, and I would have no problem just picking that thing up and just running just beads and beads and beads all over that thing with just galvanized steel smog just in my face, and I wouldn't feel any of it. I wouldn't feel sick the next day at all. This thing got rid of all that smoke. And if you know anything about galvanized steel, it sucks. Literally, I wanted to die every time I got sick from that stuff. It's terrible. But yeah, I've made a pretty much completely full recovery from being sick all the time to wearing this thing and not having to worry about that. What's great about this mask is that if you're setting the respirator down in the shop and there's particulates in the air and they fall down and they manage to get inside the mask, you can go home and you can just throw this thing in the dishwasher and give it a good rinse with a scrubber and whatever dish soap you want, because the mask here is chemical resistant, heat resistant, biological hazard resistant. I don't know why you would use a half mask for biological hazards and not a full face mask, but no, Cleanspace does have a model that uses the half mask for doctors and stuff. So I would see the need, but yeah, it works against biohazard, it works against chemical hazards, it works against heat, which is extremely important when you're a welder. This silicone here is thick. This is a very heavy-duty silicone. And don't worry about it warping because of the heat. The only thing that'll happen is it turns yellow because it's a natural substance. Was it worth the price, and would I recommend this respirator? Absolutely. I've recommended it to every single one of my coworkers. None of them bought it because thought it was too expensive, but I thought it was completely worth the price because I was not getting sick and all of them were. So that tells you the difference. And I'm able to do cardio. I'm able to work out now because I'm not feeling out of breath constantly. This thing has pretty much saved my life in the future, and I'm an 18-year-old high school graduate that worked in the welding industry for a while, and everybody knows that welding smoke causes lung cancer, and I decided, no, I'm not going to be getting lung cancer in the future. That's not my plan. So when I bought this thing, and I'm confident in saying that I am not going to get lung cancer in the future because of this. And it's pretty much saved my life. It's given me my health back. It's been great, and it's made my work experience a lot more comfortable just wearing this thing. It's been incredible, and I'm very, very glad. I'm very, very happy that I have this product, and I really thank the Cleanspace team for making it. This thing is really convenient. It fit under my Miller welding hood just fine. It fit perfectly actually in my Miller welding hood. I would rather weld with the powered air system than without it because it sort of hits the front of the welding hood and it puts the lens in the perfect position for my eyes. So it's even better welding with it than without on my Miller welding hood. I even had an Optrel welding hood, and the Optrel welding hood was very, very narrow, but this is a very squishy material, and I would still manage to squish the Optrel helmet onto the mask itself and get it to fit. It would fit tight in my Optrel hood just because of the way the thing is designed. It's a very unique helmet. Very, very unique helmet. But it still worked. I was still able to weld and breathe fine, and I used that helmet for months till I got my Miller, just because it was tougher in the industry I was working in, and I wanted to save that one for TIG welding. But yeah, this was my experience with this. I would 100% recommend getting this, and just remember, $1,000 is cheaper than $500,000.
Yeah, $500,000 in health issues.
Yep.
That'll be a wrap.